Okay, so I've gone ahead and attached the other style board to the face frame, inspected the front, everything looks very good, happy so far. So now we're going to do this vertical divider, and there's a couple approaches to installing this vertical divider that I wanted to show you. The first and the most obvious way is to measure the center mark on this. Okay, now I know it's kind of tricky measuring stuff across boards like this, but if you measure it, it's 1.5 inches, so half of that is 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to use my tape measure. I always line up with the edge of a other number. I tend not to use the edge of this unless I'm cutting like 2x4s or I'm consistently doing that from one board to the next. Anyway, I'm going to draw a line right at the 3/4 mark. Okay, and that represents the middle of that board. Let's flip it around and do the same thing. All right, 3/4. All right, about there. All right, so next I want to measure across the top or this mid rail here. I want the total length, and it should be about 30, and it is between 15/16, it's 29 and 15/16 and between 30, so it's just about 30. So the halfway mark, there's a trick to this. I'm going to measure out right on the 15, put a pencil mark right on 15. Then I'm going to repeat that from the other side. Aha, right? Something different. And if you put the one mark next to the other one, right at the 15, you'll find you'll either have a gap. You can measure from one side to the next, and then find the middle of that. Usually they're very close. In this case, they are within a 30-second. They're right there. So that pencil mark, I'm just going to make a little thicker, and that's where we'll line it up from. Okay, so I can line my pencil mark up to that. That's a great way of doing it. The other approach was to figure out what the gap is supposed to be in here. And just like we used our shelf front before, or a vertical divider, to measure off the other rails, I cut some pieces of scrap wood, and I can drop them in there, and I could use these scrap boards to hold the gap while I screw this in. And it looks really good. It looks pretty close. It's not I didn't make it super snug, but it's very, very close. And then what you would do is when you do the bottom one, you'd move these down, okay? And you'd want to use the same one. So this would be the right piece of scrap board, and put an R on here. And this would be the left one. And you'd want to keep them consistent from one to the next, okay? So you wouldn't want to swap these. And if you did, you could end up having a little bit of a unsquare hole for your door, and we don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do is use these pieces of these boards, because they look pretty good. And then I'm going to flip this around, put it over here on the, I just might as well do that now. Okay, so in this particular example, it's a little tricky because of where my clamp is. So I actually put this over the clamp. Rotate the clamp like that, and I can clamp it right in here. Okay, so put that right there. So I really like using boards to set these because it gives you a certain consistency. Even if your measurement isn't 100% right, you're still getting a lot more consistency from one location to the next than just using measuring tape. So let's go ahead and drive this guy home. Okay. All right. Top it off, swing it around. Now, I didn't use glue in all these joints. You don't have to. I just wanted to show you can do it if you want to. This glue in these joints doesn't do a whole lot for you. And the reason is these types of joints are end grain. This is the end grain of this board, and this is the long running grain. So as far as glue goes, the glue doesn't do a whole lot for end grain joints. If you were to glue a long running grain and another board next to it, like in here, If I were to put glue along that joint and clamp it, that joint's never going to come apart. But if I put glue here and try to glue that there, snap it off in 5 seconds. Okay, so it just doesn't bond well. These types of end joints require some type of woodworking joinery, fasteners, and even then, some maybe polyurethane glue or something like that. But wood glue doesn't get you a whole lot. I like doing it sometimes if the gap isn't perfect. That wood glue can swell up and come out of that gap, and with a little bit of sawdust in there, it's almost like a little wood filler automatically. But again, you don't need to do that. So this face frame is all done. The only thing I'll check now is for squareness. So I'll measure from one corner to the next. Okay, 43 1/16. And from one corner over here, down to here, 43 1/16. So it's perfectly square. It looks good. We're done with this lesson. I'm going to repeat the same process on the upper cabinet, but that upper cabinet is just 2 stiles, a top rail, and a bottom rail. It's very easy to do, and like we did with this one, I'll use the actual door stiles to set the gap from one to the next. So I'll flush the top, use the door style to set the gap to the bottom one, and then we'll be done. So that's it for the face frame lesson. We'll see you in the next lesson.